welcome to Food Rebels. I'm your host, AJ Sharp, taste expert, food writer, PR agency owner, and taste expert for a number of food awards, including Great Taste. Food Rebels is the radio show and podcast that brings you the most exciting new brands, food experts, and live on-air tastings. And we love showcasing the rebellious side of the food world. I'm really excited to introduce a special guest presenter today, Christabel Cairns, who is the Operations and Marketing Director for the Gouda Fine Food. Welcome, Christabel.
Hi, AJ. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. For those of you who don't already know, the Gouda Fine Food is an organisation that supports, celebrates and encourages independent food and drink retailers and the producers that supply them. To that end, they're also the organisers of the global taste accreditation scheme, Great Taste, those little black and gold stickers that we love finding. And something that we're going to hear a lot more about today, the World Cheese Awards. I was lucky enough to be at World Cheese this year as Sharp Relations was supporting in the press office. But before we dive into that, I want to ask more from Christabel. I've long since thought you probably have the best job in the world. Is that true?
I think it's one of the best jobs for me anyway.
It must be. I mean, what's the average week like working for the Guild? There's so much going on, isn't there?
There is. I mean, there's probably safe to say there is no average week. 1 minute we could be finalising our monthly magazine, Fine Food Digest. We organise 2 of the biggest food and drink competitions in the world, Great Taste and World Cheese Awards. And we also train people to run cheese counters in delis. There's all sorts going on and there's never a moment's rest, to be quite honest.
And all this incredible food coming through the office all the time. You must be tasting things behind the scenes every now and then.
We taste a little bit. I think it's probably a little bit more spreadsheets than tasting, but we definitely get to find out about some fantastic producers, fantastic product. It's brilliant.
So recently, the Gouda Fine Food organised the World Cheese Awards. So we had to get some of their incredible judges along to hear a little bit more about it. So we're joined today by World Cheese judges and mega cheese aficionados. We've got Patrick McGuigan, who is a UK cheese writer and educator. Welcome, Patrick.
Hello.
And we've got Emma Young, who is a cheese specialist and consultant. Welcome, Emma.
Hello.
Emma, what is it about cheese that's made you devote your whole career to it?
Well, I don't think anyone really wakes up and decides cheese. That's what I'm going to do with my life. It's definitely a passion. Food is a passion. So I didn't get into it as planned. It basically came along as a part-time job. Did it when I was at university, found out that cheese is actually really interesting. There's so much to learn about it. Cheese is something that's got so much variety, so much to learn about, so much diversity that I kind of can't get enough of it really, AJ.
Amazing. And Patrick, you're a cheese educator. What is that like? I mean, do people come and learn about cheese, like cheese school?
That's right, yeah, pretty much. We do
Awesome.
lots of training with the Guild of Fine Food where we're teaching cheesemongers and people who work in delis and farm shops to learn more about cheese and how to sell it. But I also teach other qualifications. There's a huge appetite, actually, to learn about food and where it comes from.
So that's consumers, people like me, as well as people working in the trade. Anyone can go.
Yeah. I've taught everyone from, someone who just likes to eat cheese through to cheesemakers with 30 years experience. There's always something to learn, something new. It's a huge world, cheese. It's so diverse and complicated at times, but also really delicious.
And people get passionate about it, don't they? They get so excited. You hear people go, oh, cheese. Oh, I couldn't give up cheese.
It's one of those foods that people don't like it. They love it. It becomes like an obsession. There's a few foods that are like that. I think chocolate might be one. Wine is the other one. I would say those 3, people just go really deep into it and get really passionate about it, which is great.
Let's talk about the World Cheese Awards, because this just boggles my brain. So cheese makers from around the world enter this award scheme. Christabel, you're at the front line putting this whole thing together. How on earth do you go about this? What are the logistics behind it?
It's a bit nuts as a concept. So we try and get 4,500 cheeses. They come from over 40 countries into one room for one day. And then we get about 250 cheese experts from around the world to come and judge them, which is as complicated as it sounds. So we have 20 consolidation points around the world. You've got everybody from your sort of one-person company making cheese with a herd of 20 goats, sending their cheese in, and we've got to make sure it arrives in a good condition, that the judges can taste it. And there's all sorts of licensing things to work out. So with the host country, just to make it more complicated, we actually move location every year. So this year we're in Norway. It's a bit of a headache, but it's worth it because we have this amazing group of people and products that comes together unlike anything else in the world.
It's incredible. One of the things we noticed at the press office was you had to you had to give every single person's name that was going into the judging arena, didn't you? Because all of the cheeses, it was almost like the judging arena had become its own state, like the Vatican City towards cheese.
Yeah, well, we have to work with the host country to get a special licence, and that's because not every country in the world has the same laws around cheese making or about cheese export or import. We have this special sort of dispensation so that we can get raw milk cheeses in from certain countries that wouldn't necessarily normally be allowed in the kind of normal retail train. And yeah, it means that we have this huge diverse range of things to taste, which Emma mentioned earlier.
Absolutely incredible. So you guys are tasting things that have just come from anywhere around the world. What was the most unusual cheese that you tasted this year, Emma?
Gosh, what was one of the weirdest things I had? I had a tiny blue cheese which had some sort of leaf wrap on it. I can't really describe what it was. I don't know what it was. I didn't look it up yet, but incredibly weird savoury notes, tiny little thing which must have travelled from I have no idea where. The flavour profile, what really surprised me this year is I had 2 or 3 cheeses which had flavours which I had never tasted before. As experts, we like to taste a lot of cheeses. It's our job. But when you're surprised by flavour, that's quite a nice thing.
Super exciting.
How do you pin this down? What is this? Is it bacon? Is it crisps? Is it flowers in the mouth? Like, it's really strange having to sort of find something in your vocab that's not already there.
It's completely blind judged, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in teams of 2, 3, sometimes 4 people. I think it was 2 or 3 this year. And we have a table of 45 to 50 cheeses. Basically, everything has a code, and we have an iPad which relates to said cheese. So we're tasting blind. The maker will give us a sentence or two, something which gives us the category or the style of the cheese, but not much else. So we're basing our judging on each cheese individually, which is like, it's mad. It's absolutely crazy going, right, okay, we're not judging cheddar against cheddar against cheddar on a whole table. You're trying lots of different mini categories.
Patrick, what is the criteria that you're judging against? If you're not comparing cheddar with cheddar, how does it work?
You're judging each cheese on its own merits, which is, some people find that quite hard to understand. They're expecting it's a competition, and you're finding the one cheese on the table, which at the end of the judging session, you do have to decide what is the best cheese. If every cheese on that table was remarkable and outstanding and wonderful, technically everything could get a gold medal or nothing could. It's not a competition on the table. You can give out as many gold medals, silver medals, bronze medals as you like, depending on each cheese. So the things I'm looking for as a judge are things like balance, which is quite an abstract concept in a way. What is balance? You kind of know it when a cheese doesn't have balance. If there's real spikes of acidity and bitterness and there's a lack of harmony and it's a bit all over the place in terms of its flavour, that's lacking balance. But when you have complex flavours, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, some cheeses you can taste 10 or 12 individual flavours. And if they're all working together in harmony, that's when the clouds open and the sun comes down.
I love
it. You have this beautiful moment of, the angels sing. That's something that we're looking for. So balance, complexity. Some of these cheeses have travelled a long way. I mean, we don't know where they've come from, but at the end we find out, cheeses come from Brazil or South Africa or Japan. There are faults sometimes with cheeses, and as a judge and as an experienced judge, you can assess those faults as that's something that's gone wrong in the cheese making or in the maturation. If a cheese looks a bit squashed, you just have to sort of give it a chance because it might have travelled, for thousands of miles to get there. So there's quite a lot of assessment that goes on around kind of, is this a major structural problem with the cheese, or is this something we should take into consideration?
Be kind about,
Yeah, exactly.
Christabel, where do all these cheeses come from? How do they arrive, really?
So they arrive, in all sorts of ways, really, but the key thing is a sort of chill chain process. So they'll be on trucks, in planes, and we've grouped them all together. So if you're in Spain, you deliver to your local Spanish consolidation point, and then we sort of check them in. It's actually a mammoth operation to get them all sort of unpacked. And as Patrick said, each one, it's someone's baby, it's someone's pride and joy. They've got it to us, so we've got to make sure we've unpacked it properly and presented it properly and stored it properly overnight.
And you're setting up these consolidation points all around the world?
We are, yeah. So the Guild works with all these shippers, which somebody on the team, that's a logistical nightmare in itself.
That's a job in itself, isn't it?
There's vet certificates and there's all sorts of things that until I got involved with this, I had no idea about.
So how many countries enter?
There's 43 this year. I think it was about the same last year. you've got a sort of range of raw milk cheeses, pasteurised cheeses, different milks from different animals, and you get the sort of different countries will put forward different styles of cheese, obviously.
And what are the most unusual countries that you wouldn't expect to see a cheese coming from them? You just mentioned Japan, didn't you?
Yeah, Japan. We've seen cheeses from India in the last few years. In fact, a couple of cheeses from one company in India, both 2 super golds. One was quite interesting because it was a brown cheese. So we were in Norway and everybody assumed it was a Norwegian brown cheese, and it turned out not to be. So that's that thing of not knowing where the cheese comes from. But yeah, Japan, various countries in South America, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand. So yeah, all
just
incredible.
incredible.
And then obviously Europe, all over Europe, not just the sort of obvious countries that we might know in the UK.
Emma, on your table, you were saying you've got 2 or 3 judges, is it, that you have to, presumably you have to agree with them. But I've just realised, is there a language barrier there? If you've got 250 judges from around the world, how does that work?
Great question. This year we were English speaking. Other years we've had a mixture, and there has been a language barrier. The main thing is to sort of find a way of calibrating with each other at the beginning of the judging session. What's really good about the World Cheese Awards is you do have judges from all around the world with their different expertise and their different sort of contexts from their country. So you do want to find that way of communicating with each other to see how they would judge certain things, and they might be specialists more in one style than another, and you might be in another. It's a scoring system, basically. So numbers are nicely universal, and it's a case of figuring out where your tasting stands next to your team. You'll have certain criteria to judge out of 5, certain criteria out of 10, 20 even, And for the first couple of cheeses, I always find the best thing is to calibrate. So we'll do those a little bit slower. If you can't communicate, you can write things down. I like to have pen and paper and write down numbers or thumbs up, thumbs down, just so you can find where you're standing. And it's quite surprising how you can communicate with those little bits of equipment. Everyone sort of understands the language of cheese.
The non-verbal communication, like smiling, nodding, yes,
yummy,
this is
yes,
good.
great.
And obviously you mentioned spreadsheets earlier. We've got, who speaks what language, who is a retailer, who's a producer, because as Emma mentioned, different people come at things with sort of a different angle. So Pat might write about something and kind of from a journalist point of view, Emma might look at it from how can I sell that, and there's sort of different takes on things.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Really accounting for everyone. So Patrick, did you start on a similar type of table? Because you went all the way through, didn't you?
Yeah, so I was on the super jury, which is the final at the end. So I was judging from 10 o'clock, did we start? 9 o'clock? Until 5 o'clock, and I was eating cheese. I think I worked out I tasted nearly 90 cheeses in the day. Let me paint a picture. So I'm not sure we've got across the enormity of a room full of cheese with 4,500 cheeses. So you come down in the morning, there's 250-ish judges from all over the world. And then we walk down into the arena, the field of cheese.
It is like a football pitch full of cheese. That's the best way of...
Never mind the field of dreams.
Yeah.
The field of cheese.
I wish everyone could see Patrick's face when he described, the clouds parting when he found the great cheese earlier.
But it's amazing. So you walk down. So imagine a football field, probably like 2 football pitches, laden with cheese on white tablecloth tables. This year in Trondheim, there were 100 tables, and each table had around 45 cheeses. So we're talking 4,500 in total. And then you work your way through those in the morning. You're giving out golds, silvers, bronze. I have to be honest, most cheeses don't get an award.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard to get an award. It has to be really good to even just get a bronze. To get a silver or a gold, it has to be really exceptional. I think on our table of 45, we gave 2 golds in the whole morning.
Really?
We gave quite a lot of silver and bronzes, but there was for something to get a gold, it really has to be like an epiphany, a cheese epiphany, where it really is outstanding and sort of blows your mind a bit.
Because it's just taste, isn't it? Like, this is the fundamental.
Well, it is mainly about the flavour. So Emma was talking about the scoring system, and the scoring system is weighted to, if it tastes incredible, there are more points available for flavour than, say, its appearance or its aroma, which I think is right. It is about how it tastes. Eventually, you've done your judging, and then you have to make a final decision on what is the best cheese on the table, and that's a super gold.
Just one.
Just one. And that can be quite difficult in previous years. You might have 3 or 4 golds, and then you have to retaste them as a group and decide which is...
And do you get into a bit of an argument sometimes?
It's interesting that you would think it could end up in fisticuffs, and I've never had
Cheese
that
flinging.
I've been judging at the World Cheese Awards, I think, for the best part of 15 years. It's amazing how much agreement there is, and the good cheeses really do leap out at everyone. You come to your Super Gold, they all go through to the next round, so then you've got 100 cheeses, which, you know, the super jury has to then rejudge those, pick a cheese that they want to take through to the final.
So how many judges are on the super jury? You can't have all 250 then?
16 are on the super jury. And so the 16 judges rejudge the
100
Super Golds, and they each pick a cheese that they're going to champion. And then that gets taken through to the final. So there's 16 cheeses in the final, which are judged live.
And that's the photo we see of you guys all sitting in a row, like on Strictly, holding up signs, isn't it?
So you score live. Out of 7 is the top score. We all taste together in front of a crowd of 300 or 400 people. It's quite surreal.
And probably thousands watching on live World Cheese Awards TV from home.
But the idea, if you told me when I was 15 I'd grow up to be eating cheese in front of 400 people
on live TV,
and then having to raise a score like Strictly Come cheese judging, my mind would have boggled. It sounds sort of a bit wacky and crazy and fun, and it is, but it's also really serious because these producers, these cheesemakers, it's their life, it's their passion, it's their business, and you need to give those cheeses a really fair assessment and an accurate and professional assessment, it's quite a responsibility, I think, to do it.
I can see that. And so you're tasting all these cheeses. So the top 16 cheeses, is that what you've brought in here today? Or there's a few cheeses in the studio enticing us with an incredible aroma at the moment. Are these, Emma, do you want to tell us about the cheeses?
So we have got one which was in the top 16 this year, which is very, very exciting. And it's from the UK, which is very nice.
Oh, brilliant.
So we've brought a selection in. We've got some cheeses which we've got quite an eclectic board here. We've got some which were Super Golds this year.
Yeah, all 3 were Super Golds, and one, the English cheese, went through to the final, so made it to the final 16. We don't have the Supreme Champion from this year.
We ate it all, sorry.
It's hard to get in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does anyone know how to pronounce it off the top of their head beautifully?
Nivelden Blah.
Nice.
And it's from Gardstery.
Are you looking?
I'm looking at Patrick just to kind of nod along here.
Yeah, so it was a Norwegian blue cheese that won Supreme Champion.
Supreme, so that was the top of the 16 best.
So at the end of the judging in the final, the scores are collated and you have one cheese to rule them all. And this cheese, it was a Norwegian blue called Nidelven Blå. Now, I was doing tours the next day with members of the Norwegian public, and every time I tried to pronounce the name of their champion cheese, I was corrected. So I'm sure I'm saying...
I should have let you have a go then.
I've tried about 17 times. Yeah. I keep getting it wrong.
It's an amazing story. So it's taken over. It's a real family business. They won a Super Golden Best Norwegian Cheese a few years ago in the World Cheese Awards. And a mother-in-law had recently retired, and her daughter-in-law had taken over the business, in a very small business until very recently, all female cheesemakers. So they also won sort of best female cheesemakers in the competition. Just a really kind of passionate business, big employer in the town, and just shows how much winning meant to them and it will mean for their business going forward.
And it was from Norway, only 2 hours or so away from where the actual World Cheese Awards was held, wasn't it, in Trondheim?
Exactly, yeah. So they were, as Patrick said, tasting cheese in front of a crowd. The crowd went absolutely nuts. I mean, I sort of felt like I was kind of protecting like an A-list celebrity. I had to kind of
the volume was
back
crazy,
photographers
wasn't it?
and
I think the fact that they were so close is maybe part of the reason why their cheese tasted so incredible, because their cheese was delivered a day or two before the awards. So it was in incredible condition when we tasted it, and it was a remarkable cheese. It was very creamy and rich, but still had that sort of blue, spicy earthiness that you get from the blue mould. So I was talking about balance earlier. It was an amazingly balanced cheese. You could taste the milk and incredible pastures of Norway, but they'd done an amazing job of developing the cheese in the maturing room with the penicillin rock 40 moulds to give you this incredibly sort of balanced cheese. It was the standout cheese on the day.
The crowd literally went wild. There was about 30 different photographers and filmers, weren't there, all mobbing the stage.
TV crews and,
Quite a lot of tears.
There's a lot of tears.
No, but it means a lot. And
honestly, it's so emotional when you see how much it means. to get to the final and then to win, you know, they're crying, I'm crying, Nigel Barden was crying. You know, it gets very...
I went out to try and find the winners because originally they were actually there and people were running to their stand to try and buy the cheese while these guys were still on stage.
Wow,
it was quite amazing.
A couple of Norwegian cheesemongers told me when the cheese came up into the final, they recognised it because obviously they sell that cheese a lot. And so they were putting orders in on their phones during the final because they didn't know it was going to win. But the fact even it got to the final, they're like, we need to have it on our
The
counters.
website's crashing in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that as well, actually. You know, we've got 100 super goals and they will all sell out, or we've had stories of people being new stockists, new markets that they've broken into. So it's really important.
It's a huge deal, isn't it, for the country especially? I mean, it means so much.
It's front page news in the country that wins. You know, that will be front page news. It'll be on the radio. It'll be on the TV. But that sort of explains why we don't have the Supreme Champion to taste today, unfortunately, because everybody's bought it in Norway. And I mean, there are a few bits here and there, but it's tricky to get hold of outside of Norway, isn't it?
And that's going to change their business, isn't it? It's going to fly exponentially as a result of that. And what a perfect time on the run up to Christmas when everyone's buying cheese anyway. So what have you got for us to try here, Emma?
Well then, I have got 3 cheeses. So we have 3 different styles here. The first is a lactic goat's cheese called Synodon Hill. So that one's from Oxfordshire, lovely sort of fresher young goat's cheese. So yeah, that's the one. This is a sort of pyramid shaped, very, very bright white cheese with a bit of a wrinkly vermiculated rind. And the texture is sort of a little bit feathered and slightly chalky, but in a good way in the middle. And around the outside, you've got a bit of a breakdown under the rind.
And this was one of the golds this year, was it?
This went to the final 16. So this made it all the way from the original sort of 4,500 cheeses. It was judged multiple times and made it all the way through to the final 16. So
where's it made? It's UK.
It is. It's so Synodon Hill is made by Norton and Yarrow Cheese. So it's in Oxfordshire, and they make a few sort of lactic style cheeses. This one is always on my cheese board at Christmas if I can get some. If that hasn't all been bought, which it probably will be this year.
Beautiful cheese. Actually makes your mouth water. It's so delicious.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's got nice acidity. That's what is making your mouth water. In wine tasting, they call it the drool test. So if you have a sip of white wine and you put your head down, you feel like you're going to dribble all over yourself. That's acidity. And it's definitely got my mouth watering as I taste that.
It makes you want to have a little bit more immediately, doesn't it?
I'm sorry if I'm dribbling. I can only apologise.
You're very welcome to dribble.
The other thing about this cheese, so Patrick mentioned balance quite a lot. So balance in a way, as he described, of not meaning everything is in the same level, but where everything works together. This one, you've got a really nice sort of elevated salt content, but it works with the style. You have sort of a lovely milk flavour coming through. You've got a tiny bit of a yeasty note. The acidity is high, but it works with this style. So it's all about how does it fit together. It's delicious. It's really
Absolutely delicious.
Synodon Hill is a cheese that I've written about a lot over the years, and we taste it a lot actually in the courses that I run and the one that Emma and I do together at the Guild. It's unbelievably consistent. Goat's cheeses with these rinds on can be tricky. You can end up with slightly unusual flavours, spiky flavours, and Synodon Hill is always delicious, and that is really amazing. And it has, I think, performed well at the World Cheese Awards consistently over the years. You know, they're just really good cheesemakers. I think they've got incredible milk as well. They have a herd of goats that are Anglo-Nubian breed. They've got floppy ears. They're very cute goats. And very rich milk, so it's high fat content, high butter fat. So it's that combination of really good milk, excellent cheesemakers who really know what they're doing, and you end up with a cheese like that.
Oh, it's divine. And this hard cheese, yeah. What's this one you've just given us?
So the second one is a very hard cheese. So one would not be put down if they thought it might be a sort of Italian Grana style cheese. It's the style of make, so Grana like a Parmigiano Reggiano, a Grana Padano style, but this is actually from Spain. So this is a cheese called Galmazan, kind of play on words there a little bit. So this is a Galician hard Grana style cheese. So it comes in an enormous wheel like a Parmigiano Reggiano or Grana Padano, but it's made in Galicia. The cows are out on beautiful pastures. It's a very similar style, but it's got quite a distinctly different flavour profile. But it is very different to the Italian style of cheese like this.
It doesn't taste as salty to me. There's more creaminess there and more richness.
I think so too. It's quite it's got a lovely sort of gentle, but it builds slightly. It doesn't give you an enormous whack of acidity. It doesn't give you an enormous whack of anything. It sort of sits really nicely, slightly builds, but it's all umami. It reminded us of a couple of other cheeses which are from Sweden, from even from Switzerland. So it's a really interesting cheese that can sit on a board, but I can also see it lending really well to cooking with it, grating it, making some stock, or just scoffing it like a little pocket snack.
Yeah.
Tell us about this blue one, because I think visually it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Kind of this, I don't know how to describe it, almost like a fruit cake. It's got these big raisins on top.
It's pretty wacky. So this blue, visually, before I tell you what it is, as Christabel said, it is. It looks quite wacky, quite like marble, actually. It's got a really, really beautiful sort of white colouring. It's sheep's milk. And the blue is really, really nicely sort of actually marbled throughout. But it's got a topping of some grapes. So this is a cheese called Bassaggio. It is from northern Italy. As lots of historical cheeses have quite a nice start, this was a cheese which was hidden in wine barrels to stop it being taken away during a war in the early 1900s in Italy. They basically soak this in passito, in Sicilian passito wine, and they put some muscatel grapes on top. The guy who makes it, he's Caseria, is called Caseria Carpenedo. Sorry about my pronunciation, anyone who's listening who knows how to say that properly. And his niece couldn't pronounce formaggio, so she said Bassaggio. And in northern Italy, you say your je instead of je. So she said Bassaggio, and that's what this is. So it's cheese, but pronounced by a small child incorrectly.
Wow, it's fruity, isn't it? For a blue cheese, it's so fruity.
The passito wine is a sweet wine from Sicily. So, I think it's 3 weeks it sits in the wine.
Wow.
Soaking into the cheese. So that a lot of that sweet, fruity, like honeyed flavours that you're getting is from the wine. So this is a flavoured cheese. Flavoured cheese is one of those areas that's slightly controversial. And when you talk to cheese judges or to cheese people in general, they're often a bit dismissive of flavoured cheeses. And that's because there are some, shall we say, wacky flavoured cheeses that you see, Wensleydale's with sticky toffee pudding in them, or, those kind of supermarket flavoured cheeses.
Yeah.
But actually, when you get into cheese and really learn about sort of the range of flavoured cheeses that are out there, there's a huge range with cheeses covered in leaves that bring flavour, or with spices, or soaked in alcohol. And actually, there's a big world of flavoured cheeses beyond crumbly things with dried fruit in, Some of those can be fine as well. That's one of the joys of the World Cheese Awards, I think, isn't it? As someone who loves cheese, and the same with Emma, we're constantly learning about cheese. And you go to the World Cheese Awards, you think you know quite a bit, and then there's cheeses that come along that just blow your mind. You've never seen anything like it. And they're really good. This is delicious.
That's just sorted my Christmas. That's what I'm going to do. We've got a brand new website, which we launched a couple of days ago, and it's got a list of stockists. So I'm going straight on that after this to find out where to buy some of that.
Will we have all of the World Cheese winners on there?
It will. It definitely will.
Amazing. So get down onto the new website then if you want to find out where you can get these lovely cheeses from, which is, Christabel's going to tell me.
So it's GFF, standing for Guild of Fine Food. So gff.co.uk.
gff.co.uk. I want to talk about this forever, but I have to say thank you very much to our guest presenter, Christabel Cairns. Thank you for coming down. And our expert guests, Emma and Patrick, thank you so much for being here. And you've been listening to Food Rebels, which is available on radio stations around the UK. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Audible. We're also on Instagram at food_rebels. So give us a follow. If you'd like to get in touch, send us a DM. We try and reply to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you taste the rebellion.